I would like to introduce Alma Schroeter, Head of Tax at VKB, and Mike Stalley to present on the taxDNA solution at VKB.
Thank you, everybody. Mike?
Yeah, it's working. Okay, thank you. This is a sort of a joint presentation, so.
Yeah.
So what we're going to try and do over the next kind of 30 minutes really is talk about a project that both FiscalReps and VKB have been working on over probably a couple of years, I think, probably 2 years from sort of start to finish.
Yeah.
So essentially what we're going to work through is, as it says here, the initial business problem that was identified by VKB, what the solution was that FiscalReps proposed to VKB. Within that, there are a number of critical objectives that we were asked to meet in terms of making the solution work, so we can talk about what those critical objectives were. And then sort of finally, in terms of delivering the solution, what were the kind of, what was the value added? You know, there was the solution itself, but there were also other benefits brought about by, as a consequence of the solution. So we'll talk about some of these value adds as well. Before I go any further, I'm going to hand over to Alma, who's going to give us a sort of an introduction into VKB. Alma.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Welcome, everybody. So I may introduce VKB to you, as possibly you don't know us, because we're just a local German insurance company group. But nevertheless, we're the largest public insurer, as you may perhaps know. In Germany, we had, until 1994, we had public insurance companies. And when we switched, we grew, and right now we're the largest public insurance company and one of the top 10 biggest companies in the German market. But as said before, we're doing business mainly in Germany and only part of Germany, so Bavarian, Palatinate, Saarland, Berlin, and Brandenburg, as you might just arrange for your card. Even though we do have the challenges of IPT, not only in Germany, but as well in Europe. Reason being that our clients, well, they grew with us, and they grew within Europe. So major industrial clients tend to expand their businesses into Europe. And we said, okay, if you want, we can follow you. But that means that we have to arrange to cope with all the taxes within Europe, as everybody else is struggling in this room. So we engaged FiscalReps as fiscal representation in 2010. And we have been working on building this partnership. And in 2012, we identified a problem because we're not only doing business for our clients, but we join with other public insurers in a group. And as well, we are members of larger insurance companies, groups that sign off major risks throughout Europe. So we are on the one position, we are the lead insurer for other public insurers, but also we are the following insurers within larger groups. So we get information from the lead insurer. We have to check, double check if everything is okay, and know the right taxes for our calculation of the premium. But as well, we have the problem that we are the lead insurer, and we have to set the information for our followers so they know the right taxes. And within our group, we have 15 insurance companies, 3 life, 2 health, and the rest is general insurance. And 4 of those general insurance companies, they write business together. So whenever we have a contract in certain circumstances, then the one contract goes into 4 insurance companies on a split rate. And this was a huge effort for us because sometimes every contract had to be worked on for FiscalReps to get the data to FiscalReps on 3 or 4 sites. So we did it 3 times or 4 times for every contract. And we said, okay, that's not so clever. And we tried to find a solution, and that was where FiscalReps came in. Well, just let me perhaps give you some data as well, so you can imagine. Again, to VKB, gross premiums written, so you have a number, is 6.8 million euros in 2012, and we have approximately 6.8 thousand employees in 2012 throughout the region. And well, myself, I'm head of tax. I'm pretty aware of all the changes in German IPT, as this is one of my major businesses, as well as all the other German taxes, and I only can, underline that German, especially the German taxation, they're trying to get streamlined and to get more pace on collecting taxes, and they have changed legislation, so when you file tax returns in Germany from January 1st on, you have to declare what part of premiums are taxed in another EU region. So you have to get that information also to the German authorities. Okay. You want to go?
Yeah, in terms of the business problem, this is, I think Alma and I, we'd spoken on the phone. We headed over to Munich for a day to discuss the business problem. And essentially, this is what we were confronted with when we arrived in Munich. Premium taxes are causing internal problems. VKB were having difficulty calculating the right rates of tax across Europe. They were looking to reduce the internal sort of time and cost involved in IPT compliance. As Alma said, there are a large group of many different insurers, and the actual sort of compliance effort, I think, it was growing rather than reducing. So she was keen to try and address that. And I think that sort of as a consequence of those problems, it was very difficult for the VKB group to report the information to FiscalReps, so that then we could then report their taxes and file their tax returns across all the different countries. Within the FiscalReps team, Paul Chater and Ladislav Hanak are sort of the 2 key contacts for VKB. Fortunately, Ladislav is fluent in German as well as English, which I think certainly helps.
Yes.
But it's sort of the mechanics of moving the data, I think, which was causing an awful lot of problems within the business. So these were the 4 sort of critical objectives. This is what VKB wanted us to achieve in terms of sort of improving their tax compliance systems. They wanted all their IPT to be calculated correctly and at the time of quote. Again, a lot of the work we do for clients is sort of almost after the event, where we collect data after the quote, check it, and then file tax returns. What VKB wanted, they wanted essentially our database to calculate the correct rate of tax at the time of quote to make sure that it was correct. They wanted to make sure that they could identify all taxes that should be billed onto the policyholder, so that they could make sure they're collecting all the correct amounts of tax when they bill the policyholder. Again, this is something that for most of our clients we don't really get involved with, but it was an interesting challenge. It was something that we've identified for a long time within FiscalReps, is if you can get the taxes right at the start, you can bill your policyholder, you can collect the tax, and you can pay it, and everything becomes a lot easier. The third one was a full automation of the IPT process. How can we use technology to make IPT calculation and IPT processing simpler, more quicker? It allows VKB to focus on what they do, which is being an insurance company, without having to have enormous amounts of processes and tax teams, It enables us to do our job more effectively as well, so we can support VKB better. And then finally, which is kind of the sort of the consequence of all the three above, really, is to reduce the chance of tax errors, reduce them or eliminate them completely. Again, I think in terms of the data, on the whole there was fine, but there were on occasions we would look at the data and we would sort of challenge the taxes that have been calculated. Based on our interpretation, we'd often think that different rates should apply. And I think the idea was, by doing this, we could just kind of eradicate those further discussions. They slow down the compliance process. I think that's the problem. Yep. If we identify something that's been calculated incorrectly, it takes a number of days of sort of conversation backwards and forwards to correct it. With the deadlines being as tight as they are in many countries, those 3 or 4 days are invaluable. So again, if we can do something to sort of eradicate those, that was seen as a real benefit. So they were the 4 sort of critical objectives that we were tasked with achieving. If we go on to the next slide. So what we proposed was a bespoke development of taxDNA. For those of you that sort of maybe don't know, TaxBox is a piece of software that we built a long time ago now, back in 2006. We've been using it internally since 2008. What TaxBox does, it prepares tax returns. So if you upload policy information into TaxBox, the software, it validates the taxes calculated against our own database. So it compares what you've calculated against what we think should be calculated. And then based on those calculations, it then generates a tax return, which we sign and submit to the tax office, and it generates a payment request, which we can then send to our bank, which will make the payment to the tax office. So TaxBox is what we use to do your tax compliance. taxDNA is essentially a sister sort of product to TaxBox. taxDNA is a tax calculator. So what you do with taxDNA is it uses the same tax rate database, but what you can do, you can log into taxDNA, you can choose the country, you can choose the kind of business you're writing, you can enter the premium value, press calculate, and it will tell you the number of taxes that apply and how much tax is due in relation to that particular risk. That's a product that we've had for a number of years. A number of our clients are already using that product. In our discussions with VKB, what we established was taxDNA went some of the way, but it needed some additional sort of bespoke development. There were some sort of business operational issues that taxDNA couldn't deal with. So we spent some time with VKB identifying, well, how do we need to change taxDNA so it can sort of mimic the business operations within VKB. One of the things we identified, as we said at the start, was it was a more efficient process. So to make the process efficient, we had to change the way taxDNA worked slightly so it could accommodate how VKB worked. As I said, we're sort of taxDNA here, that the 4 bullet points really at the bottom just explain what we're trying to achieve. So it was an automatic calculation of premium tax. It was providing a consistent solution across VKB. As Alma said, they've got many people in different offices in different locations. What taxDNA provided them was a consistent way of operating and calculating taxes across the business. VKB could then identify what taxes they should bill onto their policyholders so they could collect them correctly. And then finally, which is, again, is a key sort of efficiency, the data in taxDNA could then be uploaded directly into TaxBox. So when Ladislav was doing his monthly tax returns for VKB, the data that was in taxDNA would go into TaxBox and the tax returns would be prepared automatically. So there's a real kind of saving and kind of manual effort, I think, from both parties. No more rekeying of data, and hopefully sort of a nice slick process. In terms of the sort of the bespoke development, I guess there are sort of two key elements that were identified as being an additional piece of work. The first one I'm going to ask Alma to maybe explain in a bit more detail. It's called VGG is the term that we've learnt having worked with VKB.
So VGG means it's the group of public insurers that get in a group and sign larger insurance risks. So whenever we have some major risk that we cannot sign alone due to our policy, then we join in a group. And in this group, we have a fixed rate split. So whenever somebody is bringing in, everybody knows, okay, a VKB company 1 gets 25% and VKB company 2 gets 6% and so on. It splits on the group members. And what was the idea is to generate a system that we get the information of the contract once into taxDNA and then have a split automatically into the various companies, so that whenever Ladislav is taking the information out of taxDNA to taxbox, he knows, okay, 6% of this goes to VKB1, 25% is in VKB2, and all this is done automatically. So we have only once the tax calculation, and you can pull off the system all the taxes for each company, and it's done automatically, which is for us very much easier, as you might imagine. Otherwise, you would have to do it twice, thrice, or 4 times. So that was one challenge. The other challenge is obviously we are talking about industrial risks, either from our VGG originally, so that we are only the public insurance in our group, small group, or the concept of signing even larger risks in a group of other lead insurance, so the big players in the market. And as you might imagine, all those contracts vary a little bit. So whenever we got some lead insurance A or lead insurance B, they slightly differ. And the challenge was to get an idea of what comes in, how it's to be treated in taxDNA in case of what line of business, what risk, what split in each country. As mentioned, in Spain, it's always not so easy.
I mean, I think the challenge here was we've built a tax database which allows us to have specific tax rates applicable in every country to sort of, a particular defined class of business. The challenge for us was to kind of change our mindset, if you like. And, VKB sell insurance products. They don't sell, insurance based on a rate of tax or based on a subcategory that we have in our database. So the challenge was kind of to knit the two together and to give the users at VKB a list of options that they would recognize. So what we took was essentially the products that VKB would write, and then we mapped those to our tax database. So we knew if sort of product X was written by VKB, the VKB user could select product X. In the background, that was mapped through to a series of tax rates across a number of countries. So the user didn't have to necessarily have any tax expertise because all the mapping was done in the background. So they could select the product that they knew they were selling, and then all the tax work sort of happened in the background. And I think this was key, not only from a kind of a language perspective, obviously because there was the kind of the English-German translation required, but also we wanted the system to be easy for the users to use. They were insurance people, not tax people. And that was where we had to sort of do, as I say, this sort of additional piece of work to marry the two together, really. So it worked a bit more sort of efficiently again for VKB. I guess the third point we've got here was sort of the accounting reconciliation as well.
Yes, for sure. So whenever we get the information either from the lead insurers or for ourselves, then we know, okay, what taxes have been collected from the customer. We even know what, but we have to also know what taxes do we have to pay. The insurer has to pay some of the taxes. And whenever we get this into our system, then we have to know, okay, what do we have to pay through FiscalReps, and then reconcile, okay, what is open, what is okay, what is expense, and just to get a further or a future view. some of you might be also working in the Solvency II area, or might know that there are some issues coming, some big issues coming, and one of the issues that might pop up in future is to say, okay, what kind of premiums come from what country? And this is also an aspect we have to know and have back in mind, that in 2 years from now, there might be some point where you have to give additional information out of your bookkeeping system, what premium amounts come from what country. And obviously, if you are a large company and you are originally designed to do business in lots of countries, then you have it in place. But like our company, which is originally only doing business in Germany, this is some effort to do. So that was kind of bringing both together, tax compliance, efficiency in the back office, and as well knowing to get ready for the future. Mm-hmm.
So we spent some work kind of drafting out essentially a specification. So VKB gave us the system they wanted. Our job was then to go away, take taxDNA, and kind of do this additional development to give them the solution they wanted. Now, we're tax people, primarily. We have Leo and Felix, who are our software experts, but it was a big ask for them to do it on their own as well. So we partnered with 2 other businesses to help us deliver the solution. Silogis, some of you may have heard of Silogis before. They're a sort of insurance technology consultants. They worked with us in terms of the project management and identifying the specification and kind of making sure that we were building the product in accordance with the client's wishes. New Bamboo were the actual software developers, so they're developers who specialised in the programming language that our software is built in. We could give them the work, they would deliver us back the software. So these are the 2 guys we partnered with. It was a challenge for us on our side, working with FiscalReps and Silogis and New Bamboo delivering the project. We then had to communicate with VKB, with Alma and Christian as well, who sat at the back there. He was sort of the project manager for VKB, so I think there was sort of weekly or bi-weekly phone calls to make sure that everything is moving on track. But I think interestingly as well, Alma and I were discussing yesterday, there were sort of internal challenges within VKB as well.
Yeah, because as you said earlier on, the underwriting team and the back office team, there are no tax teams. They don't want to work with tax really, but they have to. And that was really the struggle to get everyone on board and to make a system that is easy to handle for the back office team. And obviously those members are German speakers, so there was a language issue. Even though we learn English in school, as you know, it's hard to do it in work then, even though. So that was the major issue, to get a system built and designed for the back office team as well as the underwriting teams. They can easily use, they understand, it's the language they know. It's there's no dealing in how do you say in English, the business classes. They don't know. They aren't interested in business classes. They just know the product. That was the main issue.
I think there was a lot of time spent mapping their products to our tax rates, but it was something that was worth doing, because once it's done,
it was.
If nothing changes, then it's kind of done forever.
Yeah.
But obviously you need to, as new products come along, then there's the challenge to map the new ones. But that was where I think a lot of the work was done. So, go live date was the 1st of October of this year, which was kind of delivered on time. The project started back in February 2012. So it's got a long ongoing project. It's now up and running, which is good. In terms of if we refer back to the business objectives, the critical objectives that we were set back at the start. These are the 4 critical objectives. I think in terms of objectives 1 and 3, we were able to say, well, we've met those immediately. So IPT amounts are now calculated correctly at the time of quote because they're being processed through taxDNA. And what we've done is we've fully automated the IPT process through the use of taxDNA, which then loads the data into TaxBox, from which we can generate tax returns. So I think points 1 and 3 we achieved immediately. Point number 2, or critical objective number 2, we've achieved as a consequence, really. Now this is, from a FiscalReps perspective, we're able to now identify and tell VKB how much they should be billing their clients in terms of taxes. It then falls to VKB to actually bill and collect those taxes themselves. But I think what taxDNA done, it's given them the numbers. It's given them the numbers so they can actually bill it and collect the amounts correctly from their clients. And then finally, really, as a consequence of all of those 3 objectives, over time we should see the benefits. I think, we are calculating tax correctly. We're reducing the errors and reducing the chances of errors, and we've automated the system. So I think there was some real kind of, some initial successes as a consequence of going live. But then what we hope to see over the next kind of few months and years are these other things happening as well, these sort of, these kind of consequences, positive consequences really, of the system. I mean, just finally, in terms of the value added, I think what we've achieved here really is we've automated what is quite a complex process. I think it's complex from a tax perspective, but it's also complex because of the way VKB operates. And marrying the 2 of those together to achieve a workable solution, I think was a positive outcome. What we've managed to do, we've embedded the FiscalReps knowledge into VKB's operations. So all our tax rate information, all our database, all our knowledge, which we've accumulated over 10 years, which is part of our database and within our systems, is now embedded within what VKB do. So they get full sight and full benefit of our tax knowledge and tax expertise. I think we have reduced internal, or we will do. I think it's still early days, but I think over time we will see a reduction in processing time, both at VKB and at FiscalReps as well, I think, because the information is flowing through much more quickly, much more easily. There's less outsourcing work for us to do. And then finally, as I said, we've improved the accuracy of the IPT calculations. We're in a stage now where I think VKB can write the business with the assurance that they're going to get the taxes calculated correctly, and by using this system with the insurance, the information will feed through to us, and the tax returns will get filed on time and correctly. Ahmed, do you want to have anything further to add in terms of the value added, or just thoughts on the project?
Well, maybe value added. Certainly, we will see further business going into other EU countries. As we have heard before, times are changing, and what makes me confident that we have a system in place that we now can promote internally also to say, okay, guys, if you want to go abroad, we have a system up and running. So whenever you want to add more business into other EU countries, then we can cope with it, because we are not a large tax compartment. We're 10 people who attend to 32 companies throughout all German taxes relevant for the companies. So we can't specialize in IPT issues just for the underwriting service. So we have to have a very smooth and efficient way of coping with that, and we have it in place now. And I think we'll see more business lines going into EU, as far as I can imagine the future right now, and which makes me very confident that we have a system in place we can work with.
Thank you very much. I think it's time for a coffee break now. So what I was going to say, if you have any questions maybe with regards to this and how we've got on, obviously Alma and I are here for the day. Christian is sat at the back, and Ladislav or Paul from our client team as well. We're all happy to sort of share our joint experiences. But for the meantime, thank you very much.
Thank you.